This video is a continuation from the previous. So, while we have looked at falling water a little bit previously, we're going to look at it in a little bit more detail now. So, Edgar Kaufman was the client, and the house is in Pennsylvania. And it was built over a waterfall in the Laurel Highlands of the Allegheny Mountains. So Kaufman's department store, there was a department store, is how Mr. Kaufman made his fortune. And they had some property in this area. And when the cabins were deteriorating, that something had to be rebuilt, he contacted Frank Lloyd Wright. And they assumed that he would design a house that would overlook the waterfall. But being Frank Lloyd Wright, he designed a house that straddled the waterfall and is possibly one of the most beautiful homes that's ever been designed, in the opinion of those who like it. And there are those that hate it because it is human altering the landscape that it now sits over, and other reasons. That's the thing about being an artist. I mean, I've tried to emphasize this so you all will understand. No matter who you are, no matter how good you will have your fans, you will have your haters, and you'll have people who've never heard of you and don't care. And that is just part of the nature of being an artist, being a designer, and why you should never take any of it personally. So he so the Kaufmans were very surprised when Wright suggested that they were going to build the house over the waterfall. And so obviously he convinced them to do this. And it's just really, really just breathtakingly beautiful. And he used boulders from the property and to build the hearth of the fireplace in the living room. The floors were waxed, and the hearth and the other stone was left plain to sort of give that impression of dry rock and wet rock. Yeah, I mean, this is just ingenious, because while it seems so obvious to do that, it's not what a lot of architects were doing. He did do some work in Japan, and you can see some of the idea of the Japanese architectural style in his work. Not literally, of course, but still, nonetheless, there is that connection. And here it is from just another angle in the winter when everything freezes up. An entrance into the house comes from over here. And he just kind of showed his sense of humor. Okay, you see that sign right there? It drives me nuts. And while I know that it needs to be done because this is now a museum, I still have a problem with signage ruining what I think ruining the design. That's why one of the things I emphasize is wayfinding in a building you should be able to wayfind. And to me, this does it. You don't need this, but it is a museum and people don't come here on a regular basis. So, and then from within the house, you can walk down and to this platform, and the water is over here, and obviously it rises and falls because, when it rains, water flowing through a river or creek can get higher. And you see the mold growing on the building. Yeah, it was one of the problems that the building had. The active stream can be heard constantly throughout the house, apparently. I'd like to go find out. I haven't been here yet, but it's definitely on my bucket list. Um, and so all this is the stone, the laid out stone was meant to align with the formation of the rock in the existing area. And you could access it, but, because of that, because of where he put it, there was definitely a mold problem in the house. And the way you mitigate mold issues is waterproofing, ventilation, and it's got to be constantly cleaning it up. Yeah, here you can see, here's where one of the ways that you could get down to the river from the terrace. So the house was very much an integral part of that flowing water. Okay, and so part of the structural system was a reinforced concrete cantilever of balconies. But they immediately noticed that there was some sagging in the balconies. And what happened was the contractor went to Frank Lloyd Wright and he said, hey, this isn't going to work. And Frank Lloyd Wright said, nonsense, I know what I'm doing. And remember, he did not complete his studies. Well, the contractor doubled the amount of rebar that Frank Lloyd Wright had put in his foundation. And despite that, the building still sagged. So they decided they wanted, later on in 2002, they had to go back, excuse me, and shore up the sagging platform, the sagging building, because this was in the process of starting to cave in and was eventually going to fail. So Frank Lloyd Wright did not allocate enough rebar, and the contractor doubled it, but yet it was still insufficient. And so they had to go back and redo the structure and repair it so that it's still standing today. Yeah, and there's another view of this where you can walk down and have access to. It would be kind of nice. I can't believe I'm doing this, but it'd be kind of nice to me if this was a little, I guess maybe it was for getting off and getting into the water. But it'd be nice if it was just a little bit bigger so I could maybe put a small little patio table out there. Or seat or something. Because it's just such a quiet, private space. Just extend it over. You know? Be a good escape. There's another view. And so he spent months thinking about what he was going to do. And as we talked about, he did not put adequate reinforcement in it. And this just kind of talks about how they argued. And even though the contractor doubled the amount of rebar, it wasn't enough. So we had to later go back and fix it, right? But it did prevent it from collapsing. So if they had followed his original designs, this would probably have collapsed. And so that's why it's always important, no matter how good you are, to get a second pair of eyes on your design to look for flaws and then listen to those people if they find them. They might not be right, but it doesn't hurt to make sure. Look at this. I love stuff like that. It's like, hey, this is a beautiful tree. We don't want to cut it down, so we're going to accommodate it. And that was, Frank Lloyd Wright was very much a huge fan of nature. And so you see the multiple levels of this house. Oh, here it is. Here's where when you open this, the desk was a problem. So he cut it out, but it looks good. It doesn't look like an afterthought. It looked like it was designed that way. And so this talks a little bit about how they, fixed the structural problem. They removed part of the floor, post-tensioned the cantilevers, and then restored the finished floor. And of course, the house had mold problems. Mr. Kaufman called Falling Water a 7-bucket building for its leaks and nicknamed it Rising Mildew. Despite the problems, it's still considered a master's masterpiece. Yeah, it's stunning house. Yeah, hard to get away from. Oh, look at that. Yeah, earlier we looked at it from this direction. I still would have loved to, I mean, I know you can see from up here all these, right? I still would have liked to have maybe another, it would have gotten flooded, but still another platform down here that you could sit. But that's just me. Okay, we're going to stop here and continue in the next video.